Thank you everybody for joining me today. I'm Christy Sumer from Retail Bliss Consulting, as well as I'm the founder and CEO of Encircled. And I'm happy to be with you this afternoon. And this presentation today is all about growing your online traffic and how you can build your revenue by being strategic and intentional, which I believe are two of the most important components when building online businesses. So I'm assuming everybody here has an online business, or they're interested in growing an online business, or maybe they're interested in using these principles to apply to a bricks and mortar business. But whatever reason you're here for, I think there's a lot that you can learn from this presentation. So we're just going to dig right in, and feel free to ask any questions if you have any questions at any time through the group chat. So this is what we're going to cover today. So we're going to take a look at all the metrics that control how much revenue your online store makes in a non-mathematical way, but in a way that breaks it down really simple so that it's super easy for you to understand which ones would be the most easy for you to tackle in terms of growing your online sales. I'm going to guide you through some steps for setting better goals. And part of that includes a demonstration of this goal-making calculator that I created. I actually created for a consulting client a long time ago and adapted it for myself. So I use it in my own business for my own e-commerce store, but I also sell it as a downloadable digital product. So we'll show you what that looks like in real life. And then outline the top-down, bottoms-up marketing planning strategy that I use in my own business. And that includes a demonstration of our traffic building planner and how I plan my traffic every month for Encircled. And then lastly, we'll answer any questions on building traffic or growing your online store. I have a few questions that people emailed in advance, so we'll cover those off for people who can't attend in person and go from there. All right, so it's nice to meet everybody. I think I have some new people on the webinar. I haven't done a webinar actually in, oh my gosh, like a year and a half. It's been really busy with Encircled. That's me and Whistler, beautiful Whistler, last year with Encircled. One of my good friends from Vancouver is a photographer, and she came out with me to Whistler, which is awesome, and did some photos for my brand. As you guys know, it's always a good idea to get photos and content whenever you can for your online store. So who I am and why I feel like I'm qualified to talk about this topic is I spent probably the first 12 years of my career in consumer packaged goods marketing, consumer services, and then I moved into strategy and retail consulting. That was essentially like my dream job, but it started to become really overwhelming because, as some of you guys may know, strategy consulting, they travel about 5 days a week, flying back and forth to client sites. So the travel was just a lot. I had a client for 1 year who I was flying back and forth, a year and a half actually, to Calgary every week. So I'm based in Toronto. Calgary is about a 4-hour flight. So that's just a lot of travel. On the pro side, it's a lot of airplane miles. So I got to fly to a lot of cool places for free. But I started to really want to do more with my life and see that, you know, I've always had that entrepreneurial drive. So I decided to start Encircled, which is my fashion line that's retailed about 99% online. We design and make versatile women's wear in Toronto, and those are our websites, so you can check them out. Both are hosted on Shopify, but I used to have a site on Magento, if you're familiar with that platform, way back when. And then, so I started Encircled in about late 2012. I was still working full time. It's very common that I hear from clients and stuff like that. They're doing, you know, their side hustle is their, you know, jobby, we call it job hobby. And then they are working full time to get their steady income. And that's exactly what I did. Until I worked up the courage to leave my corporate gig in late 2014 to run Encircled full time. So now Encircled is my full-time gig. I have 7 employees. We're hiring 2 more. So I'll have probably 10 or 11 by the end of the summer. And we're moving actually. So I'm sitting in my office right now. We're moving into 2,200 square feet, which is very exciting. Which will have all of our warehousing in the office, like a photo studio, a little mini shoppable boutique. So it's really exciting time for us, and it's super busy. Originally, I had started Retail Bliss because I wanted to help other e-commerce bosses and makers create a marketing plan that actually grows your businesses. Because what I saw is there was a general lack of kind of really understandable knowledge about how to build a marketing plan. I saw a lot of courses on Pinterest and Twitter and Facebook, but nobody really brought it all together. And I think that's a really important thing, because you can waste a lot of time running around trying different tactics without having a clear strategy. And as I mentioned, I'm based in Toronto. It's really cold out here right now. It's about 8 degrees Celsius and it's been raining for 3 days. I have a shelter cat, Madison, and Harlow is my dog. You can find me on Instagram at Christy Sumer. So let's dig in. If you feel like it, I'd love to know a little bit more about you. So if you can put in the chat box, you don't have to send it to everybody. I think you can change the option to send it to me. Just put where you're from, your store name if you have one, and how long you've been doing this e-commerce thing. Okay, cool. So we're getting some responses. Awesome. Ooh, the Netherlands. That's amazing. I love that. Priscilla, hi. I think we chatted on email. That's awesome. Thanks for joining us. And I'll chime back in when I hear some other responses. So this next slide just shows you how I feel like, and if you guys, I know most of you are involved in an e-commerce business, this is how e-commerce kind of feels like to me. Basically, e-commerce, starting an e-commerce business is like, feels like a wave is crashing over your head. I'm a surfer, which is kind of funny because I live in Canada, but I love surfing, but I hate getting hit in the head by a wave. It is the worst feeling. It's so overwhelming. You go into the whitewash, they call it the washing machine, you spin around and then you eventually pop that. But really, e-commerce is like this because there's always something new. It's such a industry that's like, it's fast paced, it's changing all the time, new technology is coming out, there's always a new app, this, that, and the other thing, a new strategy. So it's very easy to get distracted and kind of feel like you're lost. So being strategic is really what I always advise my coaching clients to do. And that's just as much about choosing what to do as it is what not to do. So you can spend a lot of time running around, pinning stuff on Pinterest and tweeting this and that and the other thing, posting stuff on Instagram, and ultimately you may not be generating any sort of benefit to your business. It may be better for you to focus on one of those channels and really put your best effort forward in that channel. So this is one of my favorite quotes: the best way to predict the future is to create it, Peter Drucker. He's a strategy guy. So really what I'm here to tell you guys today is that it doesn't have to be so complicated. E-commerce in many ways is just a numbers game. And when you start to look at it in that way, not to be like cold about it, but there are really 3 key metrics to control how much revenue you're going to make in your online store. And growing, holding, or decreasing the metrics will really hold the key to your success or failure as an online store owner. So I'm sure you're curious what these metrics are. These are the 3 metrics I believe are most important in your business. So on the left, we have traffic. So I typically look at number of unique visitors to your website instead of total number of visitors. Conversion rate percentage, so the buying rate, that would be the rate at which people are actually purchasing from your site. And I'll go into that, how that's calculated a little bit later. And average order value. So on average, how much customers are spending with you per sale. These 3 metrics are incredibly important, and I'm going to show you why on the next slide. So a lot of, I actually find a lot of the women get very scared of the math, and I'm not a math person either. I actually was terrible at math. It was my worst course at university. But when I go into these forums that are like, dominated by women, they're usually talking about more of the soft side of this. When I go into the forums, like there's a couple of more male-dominated Shopify forums, and they're always talking about like cost per click and getting into these really technical things. And I'm not a math person, so I don't sometimes that can be overwhelming, but there is a little bit of math that I think is super, super important to understanding why these metrics are important. So when you think about the number of visitors who are coming to your website on a monthly basis, let's say it's like let's say you have 100 people coming to your website on an average month. That's really low, but let's, for example, and let's say your conversion rate is 1%. That means you're getting 1 sale out of that 100 visitors, and your average order value, let's say it's $100. So you're making $100 from 100 visitors, or yeah. So that would be your money, AKA sales revenue, whatever you want to talk about. So I'm going to show you a couple of examples just to illustrate that a little bit further. So here you have traffic per month, 10,000 visitors per month, which is pretty good for an online store, a conversion rate of 2%, and an average order value of $100. So that would equal about 20,000 on average a month in revenue. Now, if you look at store number two actually has a lower conversion rate by 1%, which if you think about that in math terms, that's about half the conversion that store one has. And look at the dramatic impact it has on the revenue. This shows you why conversion rate is so important, and why that's also a really big metric which you can control in terms of optimizing your store as well. And then look at store three, so 1,000 visitors a month at a conversion rate of 8% and generating almost as much from revenue on average as store number two, that has like 10 times the amount of visitors. So this is just a perfect illustration of conversion rate and why it's so important. But conversion rate is actually a lot harder to change than you think it is. I think at the beginning, there's a couple of reasons why that is, but there's a lot of testing that has to go into conversion rate, because you can really play around with your website and different elements of your website and cause a lot of problems inadvertently. So I'm going to talk about how these kind of blend into your ways to grow your revenue. So when you think about traffic, as I talked about, your number of unique visitors coming to your website, what you can do here is really grow your number of unique visitors and traffic. And how you do that is by getting your brand more out there. And that's essentially, in my opinion, your online marketing strategy is the key driver of that. And then when you think about your conversion rate, so this is the percentage that's calculated. If you guys are using Google Analytics, it's auto-calculated in there. If you're using Shopify, they have a calculator in there. But it's essentially the number of transactions divided by the total number of visitors in the same amount of time. So, 100 transactions divided by thousands of visitors over a month. And it's a percentage. So this is a great percentage. And generally I find in between 1% to 4% is typical for a brand new store. I've even worked with brands when I was in e-commerce consulting that were like really, really low. So like 1%, and they were generating like on average, these are like billion-dollar retailers who had e-commerce firms. So you can think about the opportunity there. Like if you move 1% to even 1.25% in conversion, it can be like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars. But I found, just in my experience, conversion rate is very hard to change. Some of the things you can do is obviously increase the quality of traffic you're driving. So when we talked about traffic, the number of unique visitors, really taking this and being more targeted and more intentional with the type of traffic you're getting. You can also make it easier to shop on your site, and some of that stuff is user experience design, which is a field where it talks about how people click through your website. But if you're on a platform like Shopify or something like that, they've generally already kind of optimized it for user experience. So stuff like this would be more important in terms of like your return policies, your ship minimums and stuff like that may play into this as well. You can also enhance your brand equity, which we know is not very easy, but it's something you can do, and that will enhance your conversion rate. And then lastly, but not least, average order value. So what can you do to increase your average order value? Well, you can increase your prices. That's one option. And I've done this personally in Circle. We increased our prices last year gradually because our input costs had gone up since I launched the company 35%. As I think I mentioned in the beginning, we make everything locally in Toronto. So there's a huge cost to doing that. You could add a free ship minimum to your website above your current average order value. So if you're able to calculate your current average order value, which is super easy to calculate. So basically you just take your total amount of revenue, over whatever period you want to look at. I would do like 90 days or 6 months or something, and divide it by the number of transactions, so the number of purchases, and that will give you your average order value. I think Shopify calculates this for you. I use a tool called ShipStation for shipping labels, and that actually calculates it for me, and I believe Google does it as well. So if, let's say, for example, your average order value is $140, I would recommend making your ship minimum like $150, because you're going to push people up to a higher average order value by giving them incentives to trade up dollar-wise and build a bigger basket. Some other things you can do, you can make it easier to shop your collection and pair up other items. Promotions on buying more, like BOGOs and stuff like that, buy one, get one, and create basket building items. So like smaller price point things that are easier to add to the basket. So you can see though, if you look at this viewpoint, it's a lot simpler, in my opinion, to grow the amount of traffic you're getting. So every plan starts with a goal in mind. So this kind of comes back to what I was talking about before with, in my experience, I've worked since I started Retail Bliss, which was shortly after I quit my corporate job in 2014. I've worked with a number of entrepreneurs, and a lot of them have online stores already, and some of them were full-time and some of them were part-time in the store. And I would say not one of them had a marketing plan per se when I met them. So it's like the idea of like going on a road trip and you don't really know where you're going. It's kind of like, if you don't have a goal, you could just be spinning your wheels for a really long time, trying to end up somewhere where you don't even know where you're going. Setting goals is the first step to turning the invisible into the visible. Tony Robbins, one of my favorite quotes. And so I think, as some of you guys know, I do some mentoring for B School, which is this awesome marketing program run by Marie Forleo. And she's big on goal setting too. And I think there's an exercise in there that talks about, painting your picture. And I did that exercise actually in 2012 at one of her in-person events. And it really talks about getting super descriptive with the life and business you want, down to like what you want your office to look like or not look like. Maybe you want to work on a beach. So I think it's really important to have a vision around that, because you can say you want $100,000 a month in sales, but what that actually looks like is probably very different than you're thinking. Building a team to that level, like you have to build a team probably, unless you're doing drop shipping or maybe with Amazon, fulfillment by Amazon or something. You can maybe get away with not having too many team members. But most likely, if you're doing your own manufacturing, you're going to have a team. And having a team is great. I love my team. But that opens up a lot of other things that a lot of people don't want to deal with. Like some entrepreneurs don't want to do HR and payroll and all that kind of stuff. So I think being really specific and intentional about what type of business you want to build, as well as what that looks revenue-wise, is the key to success for a lot of people. So I really encourage you to start with where you are, whether right now you're making $500 a month in your online store or $5,000. Start from there and take a look at your history, year over year, month over month. You should have these numbers somewhere. Maybe your accountants have done them, or if you're using a platform like Shopify, they have great reporting tools, so they'll be able to tell you what kind of sales and traffic and all that kind of stuff that's coming in. And really aim high, be courageous about it, but let's be realistic, because you want your goals to be achievable too. That's so, so important. And so this opportunity here is really just create what I call your top line goals. So when I talked about at the beginning about top down, bottoms up marketing strategy, this is your top. These are the goals. And this is the reason why I created this goal making calculator, which I'm going to walk you guys through in just a few minutes. I had made it for a sporting goods client back in the consulting days who was really getting into online marketing, and he wanted to understand what it would take to hit, I think he was trying to do $4 million a month in sales. And so he's like, how much traffic do I need to get $4 million in revenue in that month? So I basically did this work back and used these formulas to come up with, okay, so you'll need, I don't know what it was. Maybe it was something like 1 million visitors a month or something to his website, which actually wasn't that unrealistic based on what they had going on. And then I took this traffic planner and simplified it for my own use at Encircled. So I use it not only for a goal planning tool, because as you may know, I have an investor in Encircled, so I have some reporting requirements, but also for my own personal use to track our goals on a monthly basis, daily basis, actually. I go into it just to see where we're at. And again, it's really used to create clear, realistic online sales goals that are rooted in a strategy, and helps you calculate how much traffic you actually need to meet your revenue goals. Again, you can say you want $100,000 a month in revenue this year. Let's say by June, you want to start doing $100,000 a month. But when you see how much traffic that is and how much traffic you're doing right now, it may not be realistic to have that hockey stick growth to get to that. So it may be better to set something that's more realistic for your business. And it really takes the process of marketing and makes it tangible and numbers oriented. And again, like, do not be afraid of math. And Priscilla said a little while ago, I love math, one of the attendees, which is awesome because math is great. And as long as you keep it simple, I mean, that's why this isn't in a spreadsheet, because it's super simple. So basically it takes all the metrics I mentioned earlier, the conversion rate, traffic, average order value, and based on your history and goals helps you calculate and track and gut check your goals. It can be used as a daily, weekly tracker. So I use it daily to kind of count back as to how much revenue I need to generate in order to meet my goals. And it's really, really super easy to use. So I'm just gonna demonstrate and switch windows for you guys. And hopefully we can do that. Let me see. Desktop. All right. Cool. So hopefully everybody can see the calculator. It's an Excel spreadsheet, which I know scares some people, but you can open it in Google Sheets too if that feels better for you. So here's the goal making calculator. So this looks like a lot of information, but I'm just going to walk you through it, how it works, and we'll go through an example, which will be helpful. So I just put your company name, whatever year you're working on, so 2017, your average order value. As I mentioned before, you calculate this by taking, you know, if you even want to do the last 12 months, take the last 12 months and of your revenue and divide it by the number of transactions you've had. And then basically you're going to come up with your goal sales for this year. So I actually recommend doing this last, filling this in. I would start with the actuals from the year before. So I would take your actual sales from January through to December. And again, you can play around with these months. If your fiscal year starts a different month, then you can change these if you want. I would take your actual sales from last year. So say you did like 10,000 in January or 8,000 in February, whatever it is, and start putting that in there. Fill in your conversion rate, and then you're going to put in your actual sales this year as you track against your goals. And then what you're going to do is go back here and set your goals. It's really hard to do goal setting. I mean, it is a bit of an art and a science because you really want to look at your history. And if you have a new business, which I know a lot of you guys do, you may not have very much history. So a lot of it is just guesstimating, which is super uncomfortable for a lot of people. But it's important to set something down because otherwise you're not working towards anything. So here's an example of, I just made this up, XYZ brand. I put their average order value as $90, which is pretty good. And then I put their actuals in here for last year. Don't pay attention too much to the numbers. They're just for illustration because this is kind of a weird sales pattern, if you ask me. A lot of growth and then it dips in December, which would be a weird business in my opinion. And then you can see their full year total for last year was 315,000. I put their conversion rate at 2%. Again, conversion rate is just looking at the number of purchases versus the number of visitors that come to your website on a monthly, yearly, whatever basis. And you can actually adjust this. So you could overwrite these formulas if you wanted. For example, I know that our conversion rate is a lot lower in January, but around Black Friday, November, December, it goes really high. So you can definitely play around with that. These I would just leave. I wouldn't touch anything that's not highlighted. And actual sales this year. So let's just look at an example. Let's do January as an example. So this XYZ brand had set their goal in January for 20,000. And last year they did 5,000 in sales in January. That's a pretty big increase. That's 300% increase. And that based on their conversion rate, that's 222 transactions for the month. And they need 11,000 visitors on average every month to visit their website to hit that goal of 20,000. And that's like a decent amount, I would say. Conversion rate is pretty good. And then it breaks it down into weekly visitors. So on a weekly basis, they would need 2,554. And this number to me is most important than daily, because I know you guys always look at your daily traffic. So on average, every day, you need 365 people to land on your site. And then this is what they actually did. So they actually missed their goal. but they came pretty close. So you can see they hit 75% of their goal, and that's still a 200% increase over last year, which is pretty good. So if I was this brand, and let's say we hadn't done any of this, I would maybe take a look at our goals and say, are these realistic? Because that's a pretty big miss. You can see down here, it shows you the sales left to meet the target. So they missed by 5,000. Their target was 20,000. They got 15,000. And then number of days left in the month, 0, because that month is closed. And number of days past the month, 31, because January has 31 days. So it shows your average daily run rate, which is essentially just taking the actual number of sales this year divided by the number of days in the month. In January is 31 days, so $483 per day. Now let's flip over to December. So we'll work through this one because this is a partial month. The month hasn't finished, it's 21 days. Let's pretend we're in December. So they set their goal for $50,000 in revenue in December. Their actual sales last year were 25,000, so that's a 100% increase. That's pretty aggressive. So they will need to do in December to meet their goal, 556 transactions and 27,000 visitors to their website, which almost 1,000 people on their website a day, which is pretty big. So month to date, we're pretending this is a partial month. We're saying it's the 21st of December right now, so they 21 days have passed. On average, they're doing $1,900 a day. So that's just taking what their actual sales are, dividing by the number of days that have passed in the month. And then it's showing they still need to make $10,000 to reach their $50,000 goal. And there's 10 days left, so that's $1,000 a day. Now I would look at this and say, okay, they're running at about $1,900 a day, $1,000 a day left to make the goal. They're probably going to make it. That's pretty good. But if the run rate was like $483, this was $500, I would be a little bit skeptical. So this is kind of an interesting spreadsheet. I know it can be super overwhelming, but I think when you put your own numbers into it, it starts to make a lot more sense. But you can really play around with the information here. So let's say I put the goal in January down to 10,000. You can see the monthly number of visitors required to make that goal just like chopped in half. So this is why it's so important to have a goal that is rooted in both strategy and the math, because if you're saying, let's say you have a store right now and you're doing 3,000 in sales and you want to do, let's change this to 10,000 the next month. You can see what that means from a traffic standpoint. All other things held the same. So you're going to go from needing probably about 1,000, 2,000 people a month, which is 55 a day, to 182 people on your website a day. And I know that if you're starting a business, that can be really difficult. I mean, eCircle's been around for 4.5 years, and we've finally gotten to the level where we have I would say very predictable revenue. But it's still completely, like, I can tell you when I set goals this year in this thing, our January was kind of on par, and our February was like 4 times what we had set the goal for. And then we ran out of inventory because March was like 3 times. So we started to run out of inventory somewhere here because our goals were actually set too low, which is another problem we can talk about a little bit. But yeah, this is pretty straightforward, but I do have this as a downloadable digital product. So there's like a walkthrough, there's an FAQ. You can see there's definitions on here. And I mean, if you're really creative and good with Excel, you could probably make your own, but it's just a lot easier to download something from somebody that works already. It makes it super turnkey. So we're going to go back to the PowerPoint now, and I'll swap over there in 1 second. Okay, we're going to go. Okay, cool. Hopefully you can see the PowerPoint again. Awesome. Okay, cool. All right, so that was the goal making calculator. Hopefully that wasn't too overwhelming. If you do have questions, I mean, shoot them in the chat box now that I know where that is. And we can chat about them. But basically the principle of the goal making calculator is to make it easy to take your goals and make them tangible. So if you know, like, you want to do $1,000 a month in your store and that's all you want to do, and that's fine because it's like your side hustle and stuff like that, then you know you're going to need a certain number of people to come to your website every month. And just marketing is really figuring out how you're going to drive that number of people to your website. So that's kind of what we're going to talk about next. We're going to talk about driving traffic and how to actually do that. So driving traffic really starts with finding your tribe. So your tribe is the people who love your products and want more of them and who will just rave about them. And I think this also evolves as brands change too. I know, for example, with Encircled, our tribe was very different at the beginning than it is now. Our brand was super focused on traveling light when we launched, because our products were really focused on the multi-way aspects. And I think as the brand has evolved a little bit, we've focused a lot more on everyday ventures and bringing, the alignment of women's values with their closet in terms of having ethically made and sustainable pieces that they can get a lot of wear out of, and quality over quantity. And that's attracted to a different type of customer. It's not a bad customer, but it's just different. Like a hardcore traveler versus like, a backpacker versus somebody who's, trying to refresh their closet with items that aren't fast fashion. It is a different customer. So this is one of my favorite quotes from Marie Forleo. If you're speaking to everyone, you're speaking to no one. And that is so true. So a lot of the mentoring that I do in her program, we see a lot of people. She uses a strategy that a few other marketing consultants use called ideal customer, and I call it dream customers. But it's really about narrowing in who that person is. And the whole point of it is to come up with somebody who is super targeted. And that makes people, again, really uncomfortable, especially if they don't have an existing online business, because they don't want to like peg themselves to somebody they don't know for sure is the best customer. But it really helps make driving traffic to your website so much easier when you know exactly who you're going after. So I can talk about some tactics for doing that. As well, I'll go into a little bit. I'm going to show the demo of our traffic building planner as well. But you're really going to want to know who they are down to like the nitty gritty detail. And that's why visualizing that person as a singular person is often very helpful. We have a dream customer at Encircle called Sarah. She's 35 years old. She's a physiotherapist. She's a professional. She loves traveling. Where they hang out online. So a lot of these questions are like, how do I find this information? And some of it is just, again, coming back to that guesstimating. You're just going to have to guess where they do. But if you already have a customer base of somewhat, and you already have a couple customers who for sure are like just awesome, you can totally look them up online. So some ideas on how to do that. Look them up on Facebook. See if you can find out information about them on Facebook. Go onto LinkedIn, see what they do for a living. Go onto Pinterest. Pinterest is a good one because people usually use their real names on Pinterest. So you can really get a lot of information about people, like who else they're following, what types of pins they're pinning. If you can find them on Instagram, see who else they follow on Instagram. You get a lot of information from that, like what their kind of pictures they're liking. And yeah, it takes a lot of time to do, but it will be worth it because it will tell you a lot about where you can actually place your brand to get in front of this type of person. So you really want to figure out how you can reach them in an effective and efficient way. So I say both because you want to be effective, but you also don't want to be spending thousands and thousands of dollars to acquire a customer unless you have what they would call in the industry a customer lifetime value that exceeds that amount like by 10 times. Customer lifetime value is another metric that we can talk about a little bit later. I don't know if I have a slide on that one. Maybe let's talk about it now. So customer lifetime value is often used, you'll see it in like tech companies and startup-y pitches to assess like how much revenue each customer you acquire is going to generate over their lifespan shopping with you. It's actually pretty difficult to calculate. You have to play around with a lot of metrics. You have to make a few assumptions. There's some calculators online you can try as well. But the reason why this metric is really important is because if you know that your customer lifetime value on average is, let's say $800, you can spend a little bit more to acquire that customer. So for example, I don't know, I'm trying to actually think of I just did this calculation actually for our investor, and our customer lifetime value at Encircle was actually really good. And then what I did was I applied our margin, so our average profit margin on our goods to it. And then I looked at that versus how much we were paying, for example, on Facebook to acquire a customer. And it was really quite good. Even though people would see, you know, I think on average on Facebook, you know, we sometimes have $10 per customer per conversion, which is $10 per sale, which is really good for us. But sometimes it'll be 30, and people would see that and be like, whoa, $30 per sale, that's like a lot of money. But if this customer I'm acquiring is going to spend, like, let's say thousands of dollars with me in their lifetime with Encircled, if we can keep them, then it's worth it, right? So customer lifetime value is super, super important. So reaching somebody in an efficient, effective way, like I know some people talk about, well, you don't need to pay money. You know, you see the stories on, I see them on Shopify too, where they're like $0 on advertising and multi-million-dollar company. And I think those stories are great, but I think they're also very deflating because they create this like idea that you need to not spend money to acquire customers. Like there's something wrong with that. When you think about every other brand out there, like even a grocery store spends money to acquire customers. So there's nothing wrong with actually paying for marketing as long as it's good marketing. So at Encircle, we use a lot of influencers, and some of them are free, like we'll give them free clothing. Some of them actually are free. They just want to like promote us, and they're starting their blog and stuff like that, and they want co-promotion from us on it. But some of them are paid. And that's, you know, I remember the first time I paid a blogger like a lot of money. This was, when was this? It was probably like 2014. And she wanted a lot of money, and I was like, whoa, that's a lot of money. But then basically I worked it back and I said, okay, if I'm going to pay her, let's say, this wasn't how much I paid her, but let's say it was like 500 bucks. How many sales would I need from her in order to break even? And how many sales would I need from her in order to make money? So I did that math based on what our profit margin is on average and looked at it and said, okay, like I'm going to need, you know, X number of sales from her. And is that realistic? Well, yeah, she's got like 500,000 unique visitors to her blog a month. If we can't get that, then that's pretty bad marketing. So, you know, we took the leap. But a lot of marketing for product-based businesses is doing that kind of like upfront calculation and then afterwards measuring it and seeing if it was an efficient way to get your dream customers. And really, truly the secret, I believe, and when I talk to people, I had somebody stop by my office the other day. She's lovely. She owns a resale boutique, luxury kids boutique in Toronto. And she's opening her second location. She has an online store. And she's kind of asking me what works for online marketing. And I always ask, like, what's worked in the past? Like, what is working right now for your business to grow your online traffic? Like, is it Facebook? Is it Instagram? Or is it maybe email marketing? Like, what's worked? Like, what channel is actually working? And you'll find that answer in Google Analytics if you have it properly set up, or in Shopify now, they have great referral reporting. They can show you where their sales come from. And can you do more of that? Because you really want to find what's working and just double down on it. So in Circle, we found out very early on that like influencers were really key to bringing customers to our product, like travel bloggers for sure. Because people, when they're going on trips, are always referring to travel blogs, packing lists and stuff like that. So taking that, I really saw, okay, this is working. All right, let's find some more. And then when we felt like we kind of spent a lot of time in that segment, we started to change. And as our brand evolved too, we changed into more of the ethical fashion bloggers. So, but we had a span where we tested out working with mom bloggers and it just didn't work for us. So we stopped doing that. So some of it is you're gonna have to spend some money, I think, to like test out avenues and see if they work. But as long as you're measuring them and figuring out and not repeating the same mistakes, I think it's fine. So again, this kind of fits into what I was just talking about. There is no silver bullet. No marketing strategy is the same. It really truly depends on who the customer is that you're trying to attract. And what works for one brand may not work for you. So if you take one of those courses from, you know, Pinterest expert who says she grew her business into, you know, $1 million business using just Pinterest or something, well, great, but like that may not work for you. I can tell you we have 21,000 Pinterest followers and Encircled, and I would say Pinterest does not generate that much revenue for us. Generally, it's a lot of traffic. It's a good lead flow for our email, but as a straight conversion metric, it's not that great. It's attributed to sales. And by what I mean to that is that somebody may come to us and then eventually sign up for a newsletter and then eventually buy, but it's definitely not like you pin a pin and automatically you've got money in your bank. Like, I feel like some people really oversell marketing channels, and that's just, for me as a marketer, I just think it's like BS. Like, I don't like seeing that, because it misleads people, especially people who aren't from this industry, into thinking that there's something they're missing. So again, I mentioned the best way is to test and learn. So go with channels where your dream customer is and where you are best at engaging and creating content. So you want to, like, if you had to pick between, let's say, Facebook and Instagram, and you know you're just like really shitty at taking pictures, then maybe you should focus on Facebook. I always encourage my clients to think about the channels which they are that they are best operating on as well. Because like, if you know your customers on YouTube and you hate making videos, then maybe you shouldn't be on YouTube, because you're not going to have your full heart into it, right? So I think it's a balancing act about where she is, where you can, he or she, and where you are best as well. And if you haven't already and you have an online store, install Google Analytics right now. That's so important. I often see my coaching clients haven't had that, and I'm just like, oh my God, there's so much information you're missing, because it's just all about, for me, measuring what's working and doing more of it. So marketing strategy to me is making a plan. So again, we talked about trying to make a goal without a plan is like going on a road trip with no destination in mind. So it's important to create your bottoms up plan to meet your top line goals. We already talked about setting revenue goals. So setting that $5,000 goal. But then the question becomes, how are you going to generate the traffic needed to meet that revenue goal that you set? And you do have that ability to map out everything you're going to do in a month to generate traffic and put numbers against it. And it is a bit of estimation, but this process will lead you to your goal, or it actually might lead you past your goal, which would be even better, I think. So we're going to do a short demo of the traffic building planner, and I'm going to switch screens again. So let's go back to this one. All right, cool. So the traffic planner is part of the goal making calculator e-course that I sell as a digital download on Retail Bliss. And it's just a separate tab in here. So this is what it looks like. And yes, it looks overwhelming right now, but super easy to use. So company name, your average order value, which will come through from the worksheet when you fill it out properly. And then you're literally going to take, like, let's say, what month are we in? May? Well, we're about a week into May, but let's say we'll make this May. And you can put all the stuff that you're planning to do. So banner ad on XYZ blog. And let's say this one, for example, this blog has 10,000 visitors a month. And I estimate that that banner ad is going to have a 5% click-through rate. So 5% of people who see that banner ad are going to click through. Conversion rate, again, you can use your website conversion rate. So if your website conversion rate is 2% or whatever, you can put it here. Or let's say you're doing a banner ad on a super targeted site, maybe this might be a bit higher. And then it's literally going to estimate sales for you. And the reason why it's not doing that, because there's nothing in average order value. So I'm going to fill this in. Let's use 90. There you go. So it's going to estimate that this banner ad is going to drive $450 in sales that month. And so you kind of just go down the line, like that Facebook ad you're going to do, that Instagram ad, that blogger review you're planning, that roundup or gift guide you pitched for and got into, that press mention you knew was coming, all those things, and try and come up with an estimate. Now, you're not always going to have this information, like the traffic, you may have to guesstimate that, but if you are working with a blogger, they know how much traffic's coming to their website. And actually even press as well, they'll have that in their press kit typically for advertisers, because they'll know. So if you're getting PR, just go download that media kit and get that information. And then there's kind of a baseline you're going to have to do too. So like take a month where you didn't really do any kind of promotion or marketing, and take that amount of traffic or revenue that generated and fill it in here. So we all have like a baseline amount of traffic that comes to our website from just being on Facebook, just having search come, and all of this is directly taken from Google. So all you have to do is find an average month. You could even use the same month last year or whatever is comfortable for you, and fill in that information. And it's going to total to, you can see traffic, so So we could put in traffic here. I'm just going to add some stuff. 100, let's see, 450, just to show you guys. We'll put in some other examples. Facebook ad, let's say 1,000. I'm mainly looking for the traffic here because what the goal is really to compare your traffic that you're going to need versus your traffic goal. So when we go back and look at this sample here, and let's say for January, for example, you know to do $3,000 in sales, you need 1,667 visitors a month. So for here, if that was your goal, well, let's just put it in here manually. You know that you've actually overplanned for traffic. So maybe your goal is just a little bit soft. Maybe you need to increase it. So let's just flip back here and take a bigger goal. Let's go for April's goal of 11,000. So I'm just going to change this to 11,000 visitors. And then you can see you have a deficit of 6,500 visitors. Now, how you're going to fill that gap, that's marketing. So you're going to figure out how you're going to do marketing this month. Like, what are you going to do? What is your goal? Is there a product you're launching? Could you do like a new email campaign? Like you could do, let's say, an automation campaign, sign up on emails or something. Maybe you'll do a lapsed customer campaign. So that's basically like emailing people who haven't purchased from you in a while. That's actually a really great way to generate traffic and revenue. Let's see. So now we're getting closer. So really it is about taking some of those marketing tactics that you're doing and making them work harder for you, like putting some numbers against them. You can see how quickly I did that. I mean, it's really just estimation. If you want to keep it really simple, you just use 1% as your conversion rate or whatever your conversion rate is right now. And get this information from Google Analytics. You can see there's actually a little bit of a deficit here. Generally, what I recommend is over planning your traffic. So planning for way more traffic than you think you need, probably about 20% more, because it's very unpredictable to get these numbers right. So you always want to plan for more rather than less. I actually think myself I've gotten maybe too good at this because at Circle we tend to have way too much traffic. I think our January was like, as I mentioned, was like not so good. Like it was up over last year, but it wasn't great. And so I like really dialed up my marketing efforts. And so I was putting in, oh, this blogger review, this person, that person, everything. And then like February was insane. So I like actually way over planned our traffic. And that can be a problem because if you don't have inventory or you're making inventory yourself, that can really throw off your game. So yeah, that's kind of how this works. If you guys have any questions, drop them in the chat box about this guy. And then I just go along and keep doing whatever month you're working on. So month 1, month 2, month 3, and go from there. And it's really simple to use. It does all the math for you, which is really nice. So I'm just gonna go back to the presentation. Cool. All right, we do have a question, so I'm just going to jump back over to our chat box. So if I work with a blogger with 10,000 views a month, how do I estimate the click-through to my site? Or do I get it out of analytics afterwards? That's a great question. So if you're working with a blogger who works with a lot of brands, generally he or she will know what their click-through is typically from a review or from a banner ad, for example. So my first starting point with that would be to ask the blogger and say, you know, what's your average click-through rate from a similar type of promotion? Or do you have a media kit? Sometimes they'll put that in there, or ask to see their Google Analytics because they might be able to provide you that information. Of course, you can like get it after the promotion, but it's better to get it up front so you know what to expect and see if it makes sense. Because sometimes I've worked with bloggers who have, like we'll get approached by people who have very low traffic. So let's say 2,000 a month or something. And I'm like, ooh, and they want money. And I'm like, that's probably like, we're probably not going to pay for that, but we would maybe do a product trade if they'll take photos for us and stuff like that and give us rights to that content. But yeah, because you have to have a certain amount of traffic to be able to drive sales. If that person only has 2,000 visitors a month, let's say, and their click-through is like 1%, then you're only possibly getting like 2 people onto your website. That would never work out from an ROI perspective unless that person was spending $1,000 with you. But bloggers are a huge opportunity. I mean, they are the new, for me, they're like the new, I don't know, the new press. Like when you work with press agencies, like they always try and get blogger influencers, and I'm like, oh no, we're already doing that. And they're like, what? But they are a good avenue because people really trust bloggers now. They are like a new media source, right? So it's a great question though. All right, let's go back to the presentation. So as I mentioned to you guys, I have that template that I showed you, did the walkthrough on, the goal making calculator template. So that one where you set the goals. It works with Excel, and Google Sheets, Apple numbers as well. It includes that traffic planning tool that I took you through just now, and a 1-hour e-course that kind of walks you through everything on how to set some majorly amazing goals. That's a download on Retail Bliss. I launched it maybe a couple months ago. I just took a weekend and I built it all, and I just wanted to make it look super good for you guys. Mine actually doesn't even look this nice, the one that I work in for Encircle. I made this one look just so much more organized. Mine's a bit of a gong show, but it does the work. So I sell this on retailbliss.ca. I think it's $149, but you can get $50 off in the next 48 hours. We're doing a promotion as a thank you for jumping on this webinar, and you just use the code GETGOALS at checkout in the promo box, and it's an immediate download, so it'll be in your inbox once you pay. You can also have the option to add on a coaching session with me for half off my usual rate. So I don't do a ton of coaching anymore. I actually just wrapped up my mentoring with Marie Forleo, so I have a little bit more availability, although I am going to Mexico, which I'm super excited about. And we are moving our office, so I don't have a ton of availability, but I'm willing to take on a few clients over the next couple months just to help people, because I really love working with startup entrepreneurs, because, you know I was once in your shoes, and I've been exactly where you are, and I know I can help you get over those hurdles and build that business you love. So there's the option to add on a coaching session. It's an option in there. It's about half my typical rate. And here's the link to buy. I'll drop it in an email so you don't have to write it down or anything like that, because I'm sending out the slides after this. You guys can have a copy of this presentation as well. And then if you'd rather just do a one-on-one session with me, you can save 15% off with the code 15 off, and I'll send that out as well. So I do some one-on-one coaching, but not a ton, but I'm happy to do it and just jam with you guys on marketing strategy and setting some better goals. So if there's any questions, that's pretty much all I wanted to cover today. I'm happy to go over the questions that came in earlier this week and dig into those. And if you have any questions, just drop them in the chat box and I'll answer them as well. One of the questions that came in earlier before this presentation from somebody who couldn't attend was she wanted to know what's been my biggest revenue driving channel for Encircled, and how did I build it to be that way? So that's a good question. It's a great question. So actually, Encircled gets probably at least 50%, maybe even more. The analytics are a little weird with Google Analytics and tracking for email, but from email. So our newsletter actually generates about 50 to 60% of our sales, if not more, which is pretty high for e-commerce. There's a couple of great downloads. I can try and find them and put them in the follow-up email from this, but that show you on average where people get most of their sales. And I know Encircled does under index for search engine like optimization, like direct search traffic, organic search. We're actually hiring somebody to help us with that right now. But yeah, we get most of our sales from email. Our email list is very precious to us, and we treat it as such. I send out a newsletter every week. I write the newsletter. It's written in first person. We do sell through the newsletter. We do a lot of pre-orders and stuff like that through the newsletter, but it's mainly a tool for connecting. So I've always just viewed it as a tool to reach out to our customers and really share our story and get them engaged with the process of building building the business, honestly. A lot of our customers have been with us from the beginning and kind of reading the newsletter and just, I don't know, they enjoy the content. So we try not to like sell too hard in it. But lately, because we've been out of inventory for the last month or so, we've been doing a lot of pre-orders. So there's been a lot of selling going on in there. But it's, our list started to grow a lot. I would say actually when I did B school, actually was very helpful for putting an email at the forefront. I wasn't super focused on that before. And that's when I developed my email opt-in bonus, which originally was a free downloadable packing list. And that worked really, really well for a long time. And then we ended up switching that in January to this 18-page minimalist wardrobe workbook. So a little bit more aligned with our brand positioning. And that just accelerated our list growth like crazy. Like talk about like, I mean, one of my team members has like email subscribers on her scorecard. And I feel like I set it too low. Like I think she already achieved it in like 3 months or something. So yeah, I mean, there is something to having, you know, a really good email opt-in bonus. That's something that speaks to your dream customers for sure. So I always emphasize spending time on that. Let me see if I have any other questions. Oh, there's one more question to go into here. So do you think I should do Facebook advertising? And if so, how much should I spend per campaign or ad? So that's a tricky question. Facebook advertising, I think, can be really, really good. We actually get a lot of customers in our studio shopping from Facebook ads. We get them online. Obviously, they do pretty well for us as well. But they are, again, a lot of what I talked about earlier, which is like test and learn. Like the Facebook ads are very, you can like spend a lot of money and not make a lot of money. So you have to watch them really closely and you have to test and learn to figure out what audience is your best audience. For us, we actually uploaded our customer database and mirrored it to create a lookalike audience. And that's been really helpful for us. And that tends to work the best in terms of targeting. But Facebook ads, absolutely. I think you should try them out. Just be careful and watch them and test different creative elements and different, you know, offers and stuff like that. But there's some great resources out there for Facebook. I mean, I'm not a Facebook pro, but Amy Porterfield's podcast is awesome. And so is, oh my God, what's his name? Rick Mulready. He's really good too. So if you really want to dig into it, I highly recommend, you know, linking in with the experts. But again, I always encourage you to have like a holistic marketing plan. So like have those goals set so you know how much you want to spend on Facebook ads. So if you know you only want to do $5,000 a month in revenue, I say only, maybe you don't want to spend $5,000 on Facebook ads. So you want to have that kind of gut check there as well. And then the last emailed in question I have is about, all right, so how do I know that I've set the right goal? So that's a tough question. I don't think you ever really know. I mean, you have to do something, you know, my mentor says like, you have to set a goal that's like slightly scary. So something that makes you feel a little bit nervous. Like when you put that goal down, you're like, oh my God. Like this year I put down like a really big goal. It's actually this month, so I got to get my butt in gear. But I remember when I wrote it down, I was like, at the time I did that work, which would have been a year ago, I was like, there's no way. That's literally what I thought in my head. There's no way I could get there. But then you hit that goal and you're like, oh my God, how did I like think that was so hard? So I always recommend like, you know, having that lens of aiming high, but maybe doing it in a gradual way. So like, I didn't put that goal next month. I put it like a year out. So like, I think having those big kind of scary goals is really important to give you something to work towards. And not every business is going to want those types of goals. And not every business is going to want to grow like that. And that's fine. Just be honest and authentic with the type of business that you want to grow, and set goals that feel good for you intuitively as well. All right, so if there's no other questions, you guys can get your own copy of that e-course and calculator downloadable from my website if you want, and really get out there and start setting some courageous goals for your business and build your online sales. And definitely stay in touch with me on Instagram at Christy Sumer. I'd love to see what you guys are up to and keep following my blog. I'm going to get back into a more regular schedule of blogging and audio blogging and vlogging so that I can keep giving you guys some good value on Retail Bliss as well, because I really want to see more and more women entrepreneurs grow some awesome businesses, because it's such a great time to do that online. All right, thanks for tuning in, guys. I really appreciate your patience and listening with this new webinar platform. And I'm going to send out the recording sometime tomorrow with the slides. So if you want to check back to it, we can do that then. All right, take care and have a great afternoon. Thanks so much, guys.